Can you see me, Bill?
I can see you. I'm
Yeah.
looking right past you. Yeah, they're still there. Yeah,
You're looking right through me, more like it.
that's right. Yeah.
So Bill, you don't have to have all of us at the meeting to carry on with the public hearing if I'm not in town?
Don't have, unless you want to come through on your phone or something. I'll do it. Yeah.
I'm camping.
You,
I've been waiting to take my family camping all
you
July, but we meet every week.
You can't vote on the outcome. Will you be on the agenda, on the regular agenda? Or are you
No.
going to miss? Okay.
No,
Yeah,
we've
you
been
can't
meeting every
vote.
week, and so I decided I would have gone this week, but we had this, so.
You can't vote on the outcome of the public hearing until you've read all the material. That's the requirement,
Okay.
which of course you would do, and reading, including the proceedings of the public hearing.
Which I do anyway.
That's correct.
Yeah. Okay.
And Mr. Mayor, the public hearing is on YouTube, so it can be viewed again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, it's 7 p.m. somewhere, and I'll call the meeting of the special council meeting of July 14, 2020 to order. Welcome everybody who's attending and participating, and acknowledging as well that we are meeting on the territory of the Squamish Nation. We have the agenda to approve, but before we approve it, I'm going to make some changes to it. First of all, I'd like, because the public hearing had to be recessed, we will remove from the agenda items 9.2, 9.3, 9.4, and 9.5, which can't be considered until after the public hearing is closed. And I'd also like to remove, because again, this is a special council meeting as opposed to a regular, we'll remove the reference to the second inquiry section, which is number 12. The purpose of a special meeting is to consider specific items of business, and item 12 leaves it open to a number of other areas. So, but if anybody has any inquiries about items that are on the agenda, they can do that, ask those inquiries under item 4. That being said, with those changes to the agenda, could I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please? Councillor Crowell, thank you. Councillor Lumley, thank you. All in favor, adoption? Thank you, that's adopted. And we'll go directly to delegations and petitions, and April Struthers with consulting with WitWorks on organizing against racism and hate project. And welcome, April. I see you're there. I'll wait till you unmute yourself.
All right.
Okay, thank you. Are you going to be using the screen for anything, or?
Yes, I am. I'd like to share the screen if I can.
Thank you very much. I'll let you work with the corporate officer on that magic. Okay, thank you very much, and welcome again. It was 2 years almost, I think, since you were here last time with us, and we are talking about the same issue. So welcome.
Right. Thank you very much, and thank you for allowing me to arrange this and for making time on the agenda. This is something that Mayor Beamish and I have discussed several times, and he asked me to present again on the community protocol, which is to respond to critical incidents of racism and hate. And it's a local protocol, and I'm just going to give you a little bit of background about that, and then ask you if you'd like to join in being part of the protocol and answer any questions that you might have. So I will be brief.
Thank you.
The protocol and other projects that we've been working on with organizing against racism and hate is funded by the province through the Embrace BC program, which has now been switched to a different name, and there's just been a project proposal go in for yet more funding under this new name. There's been a number of past projects, and several of them in partnership with the District of Sechelt, and several of them rolling together kind of welcoming communities and accessibility and anti-discrimination themes as funding for those have come up. We are linked with the Welcoming and Inclusive Communities program of Capilano University, and we operate with an advisory group which has a number of community members on it and a number of people who qualify as community leaders and who understand the issues and provide advice to me about which way to go and what is the most strategic way to approach these difficult issues. So there is an application which has gone in regionally from Capilano University for more funding, and we haven't heard yet what the outcome of that is. There's also the Sunshine Coast Together application, which has just been submitted under Plan H with BC Healthy Communities and other funding. And that will include a component of anti-racism work from the Capilano University funding if that comes about. So we've kind of integrated that. So we've had a series of projects under this kind of funding since 2011. And I have to say that the projects here have each built on the previous project, and we've really examined what the learning is as we go through the projects and get feedback from the community and understand the needs more clearly. So in essence, we've been doing systematic capacity building over time because, as you know, to kind of move the needle on any social issue and the learning around it and to get the positive side of the issues before the public, it takes time, it takes reiteration, and it takes people seeing modeling over and over of what actually is moral, ethical, and works within the community. Now, several of the projects that we've worked with have been labeled as best practices by the provincial government, and one of them has been labeled a social innovation nationally. Now, the interesting thing is that the practices are the ones that we use on the coast all the time. It's just taking them and amplifying them for other places. They get labeled because other people haven't seen the way that we work, and it really speaks to the way that we can come together around difficult things. So we are one of 40 communities in BC now to develop a critical incident protocol to respond against racism and hate. This is kind of a rhetorical question. Why look at the issue? Well, obviously, the current climate. And you might know that in terms of epidemics or natural disasters, that issues like racism are always coming to the fore and are always increasing. It seems to be part of the fear factor around large events that happen to us over which we have little control. So that, along with ageism and domestic violence, have increased as well, kind of exponentially in the last few months. There's been incidents in other coastal communities, and some of the critical incident protocols there have been very helpful in mitigating the community opinion and in getting more positive action together. And certainly, recently, incidents locally. And I know that in Gibsons itself, you've had a series of incidents. And I have to say, the way that the town has responded to those has been very positive in terms of ways to handle these kind of incidents. So the fact that you have talked publicly about them, that you have dealt with them in terms of what Public Works needs to do to erase graffiti and all of that sort of stuff, that you've taken quick action on that, and you've been really clear with the public and in the media about what you will stand for and what you won't stand for. And all those are critical actions in themselves. Now, we also have some traditional disconnects between communities up and down the coast, and certainly with our neighbors in the Sechelt Nation. And there's work going on with that, but there's both undercurrents and deep-lying divisions that need to be continually worked on. There's a need for a prevention mechanism. How do we know what works and what to do when we need to? Well, the protocol helps to describe that. And the protocol also helps to identify and support which does work here and in other communities. So what we're trying to do now with the stage that we're at with this work is to embed a community response to critical incidents, because we've developed and published a protocol, but it's not yet embedded directly into action that's widespread. So we're working on that. And then often we have public events that bring up sort of where we are with the issue and what people can do. So we're trying to build resilience. And you'll hear that word a lot these days in practice, in local government, in public engagement, in all sorts of different fields that work with health and prevention. Certainly, we're trying to decrease the vulnerability of certain groups and increase the capacity of our communities to withstand negative social incidents and forces. And that doesn't happen by accident. This is intentional long-term work. Another rhetorical question, does racism and hate exist here? The short answer is yes, but there's a large number of people who do not experience it and don't recognize it, and they will often say it does not exist, but we know very well it does. People have said through all the projects that we've been working with that they need a language and a space to be able to talk about this genuinely, knowing that they will not offend, and maybe being clumsy as they learn what to do about the issues and how to be genuinely inclusive and to take a human rights standpoint. But people need some help and support in how to do that. And we've really noticed there's a readiness at the community level to discuss these issues, but there's also in the importance of the leadership by public institutions. And you tonight fall into that category. People are looking for role models who will surface the issues and discuss them and come to reasonable conclusions on them. And that has come out over and over again in surveys and research that we've done. So you have a huge piece to play in this. The types of isms and discrimination that we've encountered in our projects are multiple. Ageism, racism, homophobia, geographic ism, where it is that you are on the coast as compared to other people. What is your faith or religious base? How long have you lived on the coast? Body shape or size, and certainly that, along with different abled isms, came out recently in a accessibility forum that Councillor Kroll was part of, where people described what their experiences were in terms of other people's reaction to disability or to differences, really. Genderism, economic-ism, whether you have a job, whether you have means, whether you are mentally well or ill, and Americanism, which is something that people describe as starting in the days of waves of immigration of people said to be draft dodgers, and that there's some of that that has lasted in certain pockets in the coast to these days. So this stuff doesn't go away very easily. People did identify that the root of discrimination of all kinds is fear, that ignorance perpetuates it, and that some groups work on this a lot, but not all groups do, and that multicultural events are great and people really like multicultural celebrations, but they are not the same as anti-racism work, and they don't dive deeply into the only slightly hidden issues. Now, lots of people in research that we did noted that if there is not a general atmosphere in organizations or institutions where there are stances that are moral or ethical or based on human rights, where those stances, if they are not taken, that more negative discriminatory behaviors resulted. People made a clear connection between not standing up against this stuff and the kind of climate that produces. People also thought that public institutions require vigilance, supervision, correction, and education. And by that they meant internally, in terms of your own work, but also externally, that you look out around you on your horizons, on the public and community horizons, and that you remain vigilant for these kind of issues. We also discovered that there are some faith communities on the coast that have taken the lead on unpopular and hidden issues, racism amongst them, and that this has actually caused some conflict amongst faith groups locally. And these kind of tensions are what you always deal with in communities. And I work a lot on mobilizing the social forces that help to work on the progressive side of these tensions. Now in this work, the advisory group that I work with has said that we just need to have continual and more dialogue about the issues. We need to connect obviously, to local government and to schools. And we need training. We need training for the public, we need training in schools, and we probably need training in staff in some of our organizations. So those are the things that we've done in the last while. Now the protocol itself is from 2 years ago. It was developed and adapted from the Comox protocol, which has 142 signatories, and they've just renewed that recently. And it provides a blueprint for action after there is a critical incident. And one of the good things it does is it shows where there's shared community responsibility for response. So not everyone will be pointing the finger at local government, for instance, or at the school district, or at community services, or any of the larger NGOs, but we'll understand that all of us have a part to play. And what the protocol does is it outlines that, as well as giving some basic information on what is racism and hate, and on what the criminal justice system says about that, what the statutes are, gives a glossary of the terms that you need to know, and it talks about what's happened in other places as sort of a model. Now the signatories to date include the MP, the MLA, the Mayor of Sechelt, the Aboriginal liaison officers of the RCMP, a number of community service organizations and community associations, and as well a number of citizens. And every time that we present the protocol publicly, people line up to sign it. And those would be people that just identify themselves not as representatives, but as citizens. And they have an idea of what they want their community to look like, and this helps to develop that. So tonight, I'm asking that you sign the protocol. And further, if you feel that you believe what it stands for and that it will help in terms of your own work, that you review your organizational policies. And you may already have policies that are very effective. If you don't, then there's ways to develop those that are fairly simple, although it takes a long time. And then if you compare those policies with the protocol, you'll find probably some pieces you can use from the protocol and have it embedded in the organization the same way that any other policy is. We would also like to ask, if we do get funding, if your staff would be interested in joining us for some training, and possibly to have yourselves be partners with any events that we put on. And so we'll be asking further once we know what the funding situation is with that. So that is the background and the invitation to join us in supporting this protocol. I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Thank you, April. Thank you for coming back a second time on this issue. It's one that I believe that when we were first elected, you did come and you presented to us a very similar presentation. The issues weren't as clear at that time. At least to me, they weren't. Having been here now for 2 years, we've seen the crosswalk in Lower Gibsons painted over. We've seen graffiti in Lower Gibsons. We've experienced racial tensions around the Wet'suwet'en issue, and one of the young ladies in town who was peacefully demonstrating was quite physically or verbally attacked and threatened, primarily because of color. We've seen threats and characterizations of vulnerable people, mischaracterizations of vulnerable people held up to us. And we had this year, twice, the LGBT flag was taken down, when it was flying in our community. So there is a certain undercurrent. Now, I'm not suggesting at all that our community is intolerant. And I think that, however, I think that it's important that as a community leaders, we make a statement that in support of tolerance, in support of those people who are vulnerable in our community or different in our community or not like us in our community, and we never let that be exceptions. They are part of. We saw recently, last meeting, in fact, we agreed that we would refer our own street naming bylaw for review to staff, because it's a bylaw that focuses on settlers as opposed to on First Nations. and the terminology of that these days is not one that is historically acceptable anymore, and we need to look at that. And there may be others, and also in the interest of overall reconciliation, there are issues that we can work on as a community, and so that personally, I'm certainly personally as mayor prepared to sign the protocol, and we'll do that. We won't, as a council, make a decision tonight because it's not the nature of a delegation. But I will bring it back, ask that it be dealt with next week under business arising, and give council a week to consider it and a week to look at it, because we just have a policy, a practice of not kind of moving delegations to decision at the same time until there's been an opportunity to thoroughly consider it. But I'll invite other councillors if they have any questions or comments who want to speak. Councillor Crowell.
I just would like to thank April for the presentation. I have my pen handy, but we'll leave it for later. No, it's as Mayor Beamish outlined, we are living in very strange times, and things that we never expected would happen in our community are happening. And I personally know people who've been attacked over the COVID issue. The mayor referenced a couple of the other incidents that have happened, and I find it an embarrassment, and it's something that we really have to work with. And I'm very happy that you mentioned working with schools, because sometimes you can't change the views of older people, but if you can bring up a generation who are more accepting and tolerant, I think it goes a long way. And I think often if children are aware and they see bad behavior, they'll call an adult on it, where another adult not necessarily will. So I'm very encouraged that the program is extended into the school system. And again, my sincere thanks for your presentation.
Okay, so I see no other speakers. So April, thank you again very much for your time. You didn't have to travel all the way down here this time, as the magic of Zoom is saving us all travel and costs. So that thank you, and we will have this furthered under unfinished business or business arising next week. And I would ask council to consider whether they would agree to becoming signatories to the protocol and going forward doing the work required. So.
Great.
Thank you very much, April. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. So at this time on our agenda, we're on item 4, inquiries, and I'd invite anybody who wishes to come forward with an inquiry dealing with any matter that is on our agenda this evening, recognizing that the items on secondary suites and the rezoning on Venture Way and short-term rentals are not on our agenda tonight. Thank you.
And at this time, I'll ask anybody who would like to ask an inquiry of council if they could please raise their hand using the raise the hand feature at the bottom of the screen, and I'll turn your mic and video on. And I'm not seeing anyone, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on then to committee reports. And the first item of on the report, 5.1, the council directs staff to prepare a communication strategy for the implementation of the BC Energy Step Code, and the council directs staff to prepare bylaws to implement the BC Energy Step Code Step 1 for all new Part 3 and Part 9 buildings. And that arises from the July 7, 2020 Planning and Development Committee. Is there a motion to that? Councillor Ladwig, Councillor Lumley, sorry. I just looked at the chair of the committee, so sorry. Councillor Lumley, Councillor Crowell, thank you. All in favor? Thank you, thank you. Approved. And next one is for the development variance permit for 571 Shaw Road. And there's a report on this, so I would like Kristen Watkins, the planner, to present a report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will share my screen if I'm permitted. There we are. Yeah, so this report is for a decision. Sorry, bear with me 1 second. There we go. This report is for a decision on development variance permit DVP 2020-02 for 571 Shaw Road. In June, Council approved a form and character development permit for phase 1 of the 70-unit affordable housing development proposal and directed staff to notify neighbors of the variance application received in conjunction. Variances were requested to allow a portion of the parking to be angled on-street parking adjacent to the property on O'Shea Road, which you can see in the site plan I'm sharing. The site plan is the as proposed site plan, just to be clear. And to allow site-specific road cross-section design reflective of a type 1 local road classification rather than a through connecting collector road as O'Shea Road is classified in the OCP. Notification letters were sent to owners and tenants of properties within 50 meters of the site on June 25th, along with email and hand deliveries to reach staff, residents, and families at Christensen Village. In addition, the application was referred to Transportation Choices Sunshine Coast, or TRAC, for their comment. No comments were received from neighbors in response to the notifications. And meanwhile, TRAC discussed the application at its board meeting on June 29th and provided its comments, which are attached in full to the report. In my attempt to summarize these, TRAC did not support the proposed angled on-street parking and instead recommended that council support an outright reduction to the site parking to 0.7 spaces per unit. That's per residential unit. The TRAC board expressed non-support for the proposed variances to the road design standard until a clear plan is created for development of O'Shea Road as a primary active travel route in the OCP. Finally, TRAC does not support a 2.5 meter wide multi-use path south of the angled parking as a solution, citing concerns of low usership due to slower travel for cyclists and reduced pedestrian comfort. In response to the comments received, staff has provided council with revised recommendations. These are shared on page 1 of the report and in your agenda. The effect of the recommendations is first, that on-street angled parking be omitted and replaced with parallel parking on O'Shea Road. Second, that council consider an outright reduction to the on-site parking requirement from 0.9 spaces per apartment unit to 0.7. And this is based on precedent cited in the parking study as was suggested by TRAC. Thirdly, staff maintains its recommendation to vary the road design standard to encourage a narrower, slower, lower impact local road cross-section for the adjacent section of O'Shea Road. With this, staff would work with the applicant to design site-specific cycling and pedestrian infrastructure that's reflective of ongoing use of O'Shea Road as a principal route in Gibson's pedestrian and cycling network. Lastly, staff recommends that this site-specific solution include extending the existing and well-used White Tower Trail along the north side of the property, immediately south of O'Shea Road. I'm just going to move forward in my, let's see. There we go. A graphic for you. To a new trailhead at Shaw Road. So this is the, can you see my mouse? I hope. Yep. Yeah, this is the existing trail that currently ends here just at the entrance to Christensen Village. And this proposal would have the trail continue in lieu of sidewalk along the south side of the O'Shea Road segment to a new trailhead. And so it's thought that this would provide a comfortable, all ages accessible, active travel option in addition to shared use of O'Shea Road, then made safer and more comfortable in the absence of the angled parking. I have also been asked to share some napkin sketches that we've come up with to visualize what staff is proposing as an alternative. Specifically, this is O'Shea Road. The entrance to Christensen Village is here, White Tower Park here, and this is Shaw Road on the right. So we have with the local road cross-section, a 6-meter wide travel corridor with the existing sidewalk on the north side of the road. A 1-meter concrete band is part of the design for a local road to narrow the visual impact of the corridor and presumably to slow traffic. And this is where the parallel parking would be, with the 3-meter trail in the place of the original sidewalk proposed. By contrast, the cross-section design that is required by the current bylaw is expects through traffic through the current White Tower Park and has a 10-meter wide corridor with a 1.5-meter bike lane on the north and south side. Sorry, that 10 meters includes the bike lanes. And yeah, and the rest would be the same. So it's a wider corridor. So the recommendations are listed on as item 6.1 in the agenda. I'll close my screen and turn it over to you. And I also want to note that we do have the project team in the meeting if you have any questions for them.
Thank you very much. And first of all, a motion to receive the planner's report. Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor D'Andrade, thank you. All in favor of receipt? Thank you very much. Questions? It's a new concept. It does satisfy some of the concerns I expressed, but go on to questions. Councillor Kroll.
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. So if the parking is reduced, and I can see the logic behind with that, with the information that was in the report about the sort of type of resident, and because of the location and the fact that there are share cars available. But my math says 28 places. You're showing 19 on the plan, which means we're short 9. And I don't think we're going to get 9 spaces where the 14 were eliminated, but with parallel parking. So I'm just wondering, are we reducing it further, or?
Is this
Yeah,
a question to
Go
me,
ahead.
Mayor?
Yeah, sorry.
Yes. Go ahead.
If I follow the numbers, just to clarify, the parking, the variance runs with the property. So this would apply to phase 2 and phase 1 parking spaces. It would be a variance for the property. So we're looking at 70 units and a required 59 spaces. The parallel parking would assume that the parking is reduced or that the additional spaces are provided on site, depending on council's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor D'Andrade.
Thank you I appreciate that track provided the feedback. One question is, I'm still not, the parkings, whatever is the number, it's going to be selected by unit. Are they going to be numbered, assigned to a specific apartment, or it's a first come, first serve?
Yes, Kristen? Yeah.
Yeah, this wouldn't be determined by the variance. However, in the previous meeting, I think the applicants did say that they do wish to assign parking to units that require it. So they would have some assigned parking on site.
So, can I?
Councillor D'Andrade?
So I'm having like a little bit of a difficult with this concept, because does it mean that the affordable housing won't have parking available for them, especially if we go now 0.7?
Yeah, sorry, Kristen. I see that Mr. Chipman and Mr. Broderick have joined in the screen, so that if you'd like to defer to them for a response at some point, you can do that.
Sure, if Joe would like to.
Yeah.
I don't know if Joe wants to speak to that. If he does, he's welcome to.
Yeah.
Let's have Andy speak to this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Andy, thank you.
Oh.
Still on mute, Andy. Yeah.
Get better at this. We'll all be experts shortly. Yeah, no, thank you very much. The spaces will be assigned. We feel that there's sufficient parking as proposed. There is some flexibility in regard to phase two in terms of us, if we find ourselves constrained, being able to make some adjustments. And you know, we have appreciated the concerns of the council, and we want to make sure this is a project that you all feel very, very strongly in favor of. So I mean, we're working to sort of make sure we get the right balance there, and we think the proposal that's being put forward is one we can support fully.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, I'll go to Councillor Kroll next.
Just something in support of the reduced parking. At one point, I property managed a building. It was 32 units. And at the time, it certainly was affordable housing. And of the 32 parking stalls we had for the building, there were times over the 5 years I managed the place that there were as few as 10 cars in the parking lot. And it, you know, it was dictated by the, you know, the economics of the time and the affordability and the necessity. You know, a lot of people, because of where the building was situated, you know, they had cars when they moved in and they got rid of them because they didn't need them. So, you know, I think, you know, I'm certainly in support of the reduced parking.
Thank you. Councillor D'Andrade?
I'm in principle, I'm supporting of the reduction as well. And I really like the possibility that was presented here, that there would be monitoring, and if the situation changed, they could come up. The thing with the assigned parking, what makes me a little bit nervous is if someone needs affordable housing, but for whatever is the nature of their work, they need a car. So how do you reconcile the need? Or because I feel like almost discriminatory, you can say, well, if you get the affordable housing, you cannot have a car because there's no assigned car for you.
I'm happy to respond if it's
Thank you.
appropriate.
I'm hearing some other voices go on in the background.
This is Andy.
Yeah, I hear you, Andy.
Okay. All I was going to say is we're used to working in this kind of environment, and we feel that there's sufficient parking and the planning can be done in such a way, again, in regard to the space available for both phases, so that we won't face the kind of constraints and the discrimination you're afraid of. Again, as you know, we're working with a number of targeted elderly residents. We're working with a number of different groups from different areas. The location couldn't be better in terms of you know, walkability and bikeability. So, you know, I think part of the resident selection policy will really be to balance all of those things together and make sure we're serving the incomes that need the housing, but also, you know, building a community can work within the constraints of the parking that's available. We don't think it will be a constraint, and we think there's sufficient flexibility over time for us to adjust it as needed if we need to.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I have a question for staff and maybe for the corporate officer, and that is the significant change that has occurred here in terms of the variance that was referred to the new variance. Is this something that should go back out for referral again? Because it's no longer the same variance that we're asking for. Councilor, I saw your hand. Yeah. Go ahead, corporate officer.
I'm sorry, I was just going to say I would have to defer to the Director of Planning for that.
Okay, and she's there.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mayor. I'm just taking a look at the referral comments, and I don't think we would need to send it out for comments again. The building department didn't have any concerns. Infrastructure has commented heavily on the road design. Vancouver Coastal Health generally really supports this proposal, and based on their comments in the past, they typically support walkability, pedestrian orientation, active transportation. And in terms of the fire department, they would review the building permit at the stage of building permit, and they would comment on any fire access or fire code issues. So I don't think we do need to send it out for referral again, but if council wants to do that, we absolutely can.
Yeah, go to the planner, Kristen Watkins.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, because I don't think I mentioned this in the report, but these changes that are proposed actually reflect some of VCH's comments as well. While they were mostly in support, they were in favor of reducing the front parking and a couple of other things that were addressed in the new design.
Thank you. Councillor Lumley.
I'd favor the reduction in parking, and I think that idea to put the trailhead out to the road would not only work for the trail itself, but it would also alleviate some concerns as far as safety. And we first talked about cars backing in or driving to and from parking spots there. I think it would take that safety concern away. So I think that's an awesome idea. I'd support that as well.
Thank you. I'm going to actually ask if there's anybody in the gallery who would like to be to speak to this. Joe, Andy, Peter, did you want to have any more words, or is there anybody in the gallery who would specifically like to speak to this this variance at this time?
At this time, I'll ask anybody who wishes to speak to please use the raise the hand feature found at the bottom of the screen, and I'll turn on your mic and video. And I'm not seeing any, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Then I'll go back to Councillor. I saw Councillor Kroll's hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one question, looking at the plan, and I realize it's just sort of a very early plan. Garbage with 40 units and potentially 70 units. Is there an area designated for dumpsters? How is that being addressed? And I realize it's not part of this, but it was just a curiosity because, you know, garbage trucks needing to get in to pick up dumpsters or whatever, turning radiuses and things like that. Is it going to be an issue?
Mr. Broderick, you had your hand up.
Well, the planner can probably address it better than I can, but there is, that planning is on site. It was part of the development permit and is clearly designated, and it meets, I think, the requirements and should work well. But I'll defer to the planner. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's not fresh in my mind as I've been looking at the variance, but I don't recall where it is in the plan. We would make sure that all the bylaws are met when we review the building permit proposal. As far as turning radii, Peter worked hard to make sure that's all met with a pull-through loading area. It looks like Peter might have something more.
Yeah, if you go back to the original plan that we submitted, there was a designated area for 2 garbage containers and a recycling near the entrance. So we did look into the turning radius for the garbage truck and recycling at near the entrance to the site.
Thank you very much.
On the actual site.
Thank you. Yeah, I think from my perspective, I appreciate the compromise that's been done over the angle parking on the road. That was certainly a concern to me, was that, and it would certainly come to, I think, a better solution in my view. And I think reducing the number of parking spaces, I think, is also a good solution. So I support that. So, any further discussion, Council? Councillor Ladwig.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that I understand what I'm looking at. In the report, figure 1, the site plan that you've shown us, that's the previous plan, correct? But we don't have a diagram. The only diagrams we've seen of the new plan was the napkin sketch that you just provided.
That's Kristen, yes.
Right.
Yeah, sorry, same as the mayor. That's correct. We haven't had time to redesign the drawings, or the applicant hasn't had time to redo that.
Right. So just for clarity's sake, so how many stalls are we getting in phase 1 if it's 0.7, if we're reducing?
Yeah, phase 1, let's see, it's for phase 1. Peter, do you have that number at the top of your mind?
You're muted, Peter.
I'm looking on page 61 of our report, and the plan there shows 12 and 7. So that would be 19 plus whatever would be in the open parking and the parking pullout on the street, I suppose, to be available. But I see 19. I could be wrong, but unless there's a change to that. Director of Planning?
Thank you, Mayor. So 0.7 of 40 units would be about 28 stalls. But there are reduction provisions in the bylaw that they will try and meet as well. So they're proposing 2 car shares, I believe, which reduce the stalls even further. Yeah, so essentially, okay, Kirsten, she might have the right numbers.
Yeah, I did the math while you were thinking there. Yeah, it's 28 before the reduction for the car shares, less 2 because you need to provide the car share spaces, would be 24. That said, if the car share spaces were provided on the street, it may be 22 if my math is right.
So 2 car shares brings it down to 26.
Each car share space provided allows a reduction of 3 regular spaces. So it's a net decrease of 2 for each car share space.
Okay. And then what about visitor? I mean, the only reason I'm asking, yeah, like what about visitor stalls? Are we going to still have a couple of visitor stalls in the plan? Yeah, okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood what I was voting on, and that's good. I too support the reduction in parking stalls. No, I think it's a great solution. I think this is a really creative way to incorporate the mayor's concerns that were raised at last meeting, and to I thought Track's comments were really valuable and helpful. So it's great. I support it as well.
Councillor Deandra?
Yes, this regards one of the Track's comments that they mentioned that they do not support relaxing the road classification for the section of O'Shea Road until a clear plan is developed for how to utilize this route as a primary active travel route. And even though by the sketch, it seems quite amazing in a way that now the trail will be like extended, and but I feel there's a bigger plan and actually a long term that is aligned with the province guidelines for active transportation. And I feel a little bit hesitant with the change in the designation. And I wonder if there's a way of working with Track in this regard, because I think their input was phenomenal. It's very important that they are the experts of biking, and they have been quite involved with the transportation with the Sunshine Coast Active Transportation Group. And that's the only part I feel like it's tough for me to make a decision, say yes, but there's a bigger plan that could be impacted. How are we addressing that?
Give you a history on the bigger plan, and that is going back probably around 2005 or 2006. The Planning and Development Committee at that time did propose the extension of O'Shea Road through to Mahan. And at a subsequent meeting, it came to council, and council defeated that proposal. And on the basis that of the feedback from the community and the desire of the community to maintain that as a walking trail, as an area of reduced pressure. Bicycles use that all the time today. I mean, it's I use that trail frequently, and it will become more frequent. If council wishes to do that, to convert that back into pavement, I would like you to wait for 2 years, please.
No.
But it really was a strong desire of the community, and I recall the struggle the council had with it at that time of making a decision or recommendation at a planning meeting and not supporting that same recommendation at the council meeting because of the feedback and that they received from the community in terms of not wanting that to be a through road. And the struggle with it was, as a matter of fact, is the credit union actually paid for the traffic light at Mahan and the highway with the understanding that they were building at an intersection that would have through traffic and traffic coming around. and they were quite disappointed with council's decision at the time. So whether Mahan will ever be built through as a road, I don't know. Some aspects, some parts of it have ownership fronting it, that it may well someday, there'll be another decision to make. Councilor Diandrad, yeah.
Perhaps I misunderstood what the active transportation corridor means. For sure, I don't want a road cutting the park, so I'm fully supportive. But my understanding is there could be like just the bike, a bike road, perhaps not exactly where the walking, the trails are, but something adjacent to that. I don't know. That's why I was, because track themselves, they made a note on this specific topic.
Yeah,
But
it might be worth having another discussion with them on that as to what their interest would be on that. But yeah, I agree.
But I fully support like being designated more for a smaller road. Obviously, I don't see the purpose of cutting the White Tower Park.
You can see the final resolution under this part is that staff work with the applicant to design a site-specific cycling and pedestrian infrastructure reflective of ongoing use of O'Shea Road as a principal route in Gibson's pedestrian and cycling network. So that maybe you're working not only with the applicant, but with track as well on that aspect.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, council would, so we, and we've talked that through and with that amendment, would you like to add that amendment to that final resolution, Councilor Diandrad, that staff
Yes.
work with the applicant and with track?
Yes, please.
Okay, so we will add that, include that in there if, and as we go through. So the resolutions, and we have under 6.1 is that the mayor provide the opportunity for person to be heard. We did that. And that council authorized the issuance of development variant permit 2020-02 to vary bylaw 1065 to reduce the on-site parking requirement from 0.9 rather parking spaces per apartment dwelling unit to a minimum of 0.7 spaces, omitting ankles on-street parking, and B, varied bylaw 1175 to relax the road cross-section design classification for adjacent section of O'Shea Road at 571 Shaw Road from type 1 collector to type 1 local road. And further, the staff work with the applicant and track to design site-specific cycling and pedestrian infrastructure reflective of ongoing use of O'Shea Road as a principal route in Gibson's pedestrian and cycling network. Someone would like to move the recommendations? Councilor Diandrad, thank you. Councilor Kroll, second. Any further discussion by council? Councilor Diandrad, yes?
It's just because we are passing these resolutions, I wonder like the monitoring of the parking that the proponent is saying should be also embedded in the resolution. Just how, I would like to know how they would monitor. I just don't want this to be off.
Yeah. I think that might be a separate issue and come under the development permit, but corporate officer. Yeah,
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to remind everyone at this time that the motions as read were moved and seconded.
Yes, yeah, so, yeah. So let's deal with that motion and then we can deal with a further direction or motion. So all in favor of the motion as read. Thank you very much. So Councilor Diandrad, you wanted to add?
I was considering adding on the first motion because it's the parking reduction, but we can make another recommendation. I would like just this to be structured in a way so after phase one there's a serious monitoring and the conversation is not lost, right? I'm just trying to anticipate further further needs for parking. And if there's nothing happening, if the everything goes well, when the second phase comes, it's clear what the needs are, and then the design can be according, and council is at this point, they are also informed with the study that has been done.
Councillor Kroll, you wish to make comment?
I was just going to say that, you know, with what we've got in place, if there are parking issues that arise, they can certainly be addressed with the application permits for phase two. That, you know, it's just sort of creating extra work at this point. And, you know, it's actually the parking and who gets parking is actually, I would suspect, being dealt by the property management of the property itself. It's sort of, once we've reduced the parking component, it's up to them to deal with it. But if it becomes an issue, it can certainly be addressed with phase two.
Director of Planning, do you have any comment?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I think this is up to the New Commons Development and the Sunshine Coast Affordable Housing Society to determine which units get a parking space and how they manage that. So we can look at the impacts on O'Shea Road in the future.
Yeah.
And at that point, we might make some changes if we need to. But this variance decision is specifically to relax the on-site parking for that property.
It's for the whole site at this time.
For the whole site, but specific to the apartment use.
That's great.
Yeah.
If after phase one is built, we discover that maybe something different needs to be done, something different could be done. Is that correct?
The developers are indicating that for phase two, they would be willing to rework the design to put in some more parking at that time.
Okay. Councillor Andrade, is that sufficient for you this time?
Well, I just trying to avoid further problems,
Yeah,
right? I mean,
appreciate
this
that.
year we have, right? So I just like I think the planning now makes easier in the future, right? So.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everybody. And one more step closer. Thank you very much. And is there anything you want to update us on your project on? Is there anything new? Andy, you're on yours. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, we're working on finalizing the financing. CMHC is being a challenge as always, but that's okay. But it looks good. No, we really appreciate the support, and we're the lessee also to sort of raise another relationship we have with you that's not sort of regulatory, but is more of as a property owner. And obviously, we'll want to make sure that you're comfortable with us as lessees on parking issues too. So if there's ever any issue, you've got a number of levers to require us to work with you. We're going to do it anyway, but you know, I think you should be assured that we're going to want the relationship to be a good one over the next 99 years.
Great.
Peter, Andy, Joe, thank you very much for your time tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, at this time, we'll go on to council reports. If council has anything they'd like to bring forward, I will begin just to update council. Is that I participated in a water advisory committee meeting today. This is one that you'll recall we were asked to appoint somebody to. I am there as a non-voting member, so just to monitor. And this was the first meeting of that committee. There are 7 voting members currently appointed, and myself, along with Tom Lamb and Albina Paul, with the SIGD councillor, are non-voting members on the committee. So the purpose of this meeting today was just for introductions, to talk about some of the challenges that the committee will be facing, and how they want to work. The next meeting will kind of follow through with that. Next meeting is set for August the 11th, and the part of the discussion there is going to be to select a chair and vice chair, and move forward with a lot of what is reviewing work that the District of Sechelt and the Regional District have done relative to their water systems, and providing comment and maybe looking at new innovative things like gray water and black water, and water from the sewer treatment plant at Sechelt, how it could be used and implemented. So that a lot of good ideas, a lot of good and strongly dedicated people on the committee, so that I will continue to monitor that and report to council on that. So, thank you. Any other reports? Seeing none. Oh, sorry, Councilor D'Andrade, Your hand is a little bit low, Colin. You're down here when I see it. So if you could go a little bit higher. There you go. That's a good hand. That's a good hand. Okay.
Oh, just because I have been commissioned to participate on the Community Wildfire Protection Plan, selecting a candidate, but we still haven't been able. We had a meeting, and so now we are hoping to finish the process on the following meeting. So, but it's a work in progress right now.
Thank you. Councilor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. On Friday, I attended, it was sponsored by the library. It was a reconciliation walk hosted by Candace Campo. And it was just a really wonderful experience, sort of sharing stories with her. We met at Armours Beach and then traveled through the Chequelp Bandland. So it was a really great experience. It's open, one's very aware that there's room for a lot of dialogue in this area. And I did mention to her a project that's very near and dear to me. And she asked, she was thrilled at the concept of it. So hopefully we can see that moving forward. And then this afternoon I attended, it was organized by Patrick Weiler, and it was a dialogue with the Minister of Natural Resources, Seamus O'Regan. And it was an hour conversation on where the government's going to achieve sort of zero emissions. And very well done dialogue. There was an opportunity for people to inject questions, and they were fairly responsive. The hour just flew by. But I think we've got someone very good in Minister O'Regan. They've got some great projects on the books, and it was very exciting. That's it.
Yeah. I planned to attend that as well, but the other meeting was from 2 to 4 or something. So I was involved with that. And Councillor Kroll has agreed he's going to attend the meeting in Dougal Park on Thursday with the committee from Sea Shelter relative to doing the survey on the need for a safe injection site. Is that still correct, Councillor Kroll?
I'm probably going to be there with my laptops and my devices for connecting to the internet, because we also have regional district meetings.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, if anybody else can go down, I have to be in Vancouver. I have an appointment in Vancouver. It's a kind of one day this week. I had nothing scheduled, so that if anybody else can go down there, the information is around about the meeting. It's just a matter of supporting the initiative that's going on, and as seeing that if there is a need for a safe injection site in the community, the thought was that anybody who felt they would use that service would come down there and let the community know. That way we get an idea of what could be done there. So I believe it, am I correct, is 1:30?
Yes.
At Dougal Park. So that if anybody's free, you can just take a few minutes and go down there. We had nothing to do with it other than just appear and show support for the fact that they are doing that in our park there. So it'll probably be under the gazebo, or if they need to, I don't think they'll need to have a tent, but it could be under the gazebo. Okay. See nothing else. We'll go to council correspondence, and we have a reading file for the week of June 29, 2020, and a recommendation that be received. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ladwig, thank you. Any issues arising that anybody wishes to bring forward from that file? Councillor Ladwig?
Sorry, I see our CAO. Maybe he'd like to say something before I start.
Okay, CAO?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor, just regarding, there's a piece of correspondence from Mrs. Galdry regarding Gospel Rock. We have prepared a response, and it's being mailed the next day or two in response to that. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah. Councillor Ladwig, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Yeah. Well, I have two pieces from that particular file that I'd like to raise. So number 26 from Michelle Gatrell, that's not who CAO, who Manny was referring to, was it?
No.
So just regarding the early morning construction noise, I was actually really glad to see this on our file because it's something that I've been contemplating raising with council myself.
Yeah.
I asked Sue to, well, I looked at our noise bylaw the other day.
Yeah.
And our noise bylaw allows construction from, I believe, 7 a.m. till 10 o'clock at night. And that's just unacceptable in my opinion. There's no reason for people to be operating power saws up till 10 o'clock at night. My children go to bed at 8:30. I just think that our noise bylaw could use a little bit of touching up. So I thought it was very timely that she happened to write this letter because I too would like to have us review that bylaw. So I wanted to table that.
Where were you when they were building subdivisions behind my house?
Well, why didn't you raise it then?
No, actually, they don't work that late at night. I mean, usually that's for major projects and street work and stuff like that. There are occasions where that type of work has to be done.
No, I have someone next door to me that is continually doing something till very late at night, and so that's why I was thinking of looking at this myself.
Right. Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's just there's no need for that to be in there until 10 o'clock at night. Most normal construction sites aren't going until that late.
Yeah.
And I think her request for it to be pushed back to 8 a.m. instead of 7 a.m. is fair too. If you know, so anyways, I wanted to raise that, and I'm just tabling that I would like us to review our noise bylaw at some point.
You would like to make a motion, refer to staff for review?
Yes, I will make a motion that I would like staff to review our noise bylaw.
Seconded by Councilor D'Andrade. Thank you. Okay, thank you.
What
Any further discussion on that without giving any parameters around it? You just like it to come back to council and talk about it. So any further discussion? Councilor D'Andrade?
Oh, no, I want just a letter when the CEO forward to.
No, can we talk about the issue that's in front of that?
Oh, sorry, I thought we had moved that. Okay.
Now, all in favor then of the motion around the noise bylaw? Thank you. Okay, so thank you.
Yeah, and I have one more item if it's okay. I don't do this very often, so I can.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Number 27, the Heritage Playhouse requesting or raising the issue of needing support. I thought it was an interesting read and an interesting request, and it made me think that obviously the Heritage Playhouse is it's a precious little gem in our community, and be really sad to see it fold over the constraints of COVID right now. And it made me realize that I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, we did set aside a little bit of money to help small businesses in our budget, but we didn't think about nonprofits. And so I just wanted to table that as a thought for us, maybe perhaps in our grants and contributions program or something like that. But I think it would be worthwhile us kind of either following up with them or seeing if there's any way that we can support or think about how nonprofits are struggling through this COVID.
Thank you. I was contacted directly on the Playhouse, and I asked them to write a letter because I couldn't make a decision, and I've also asked the CAO to follow up with them to see exactly what their needs are. They have some basic needs to meet all the time, which is going to be their water, sewer, utility bills, and make sure that should not be a reason why any nonprofit should go under this time. So that I'm quite prepared to work with them coming up under our grants of assistance. We do have some additional unallocated funds. We don't normally allocate funds for operational purposes, but this is an exceptional year, and we have to consider those things. So that I appreciate that. So, and I don't know, CAO, have you had a chance to follow up yet with the theater?
I have not, Mr. Mayor, but it's on my to-do from Monday morning.
Yeah, thank you. And Councilor D'Andrade, I thought I saw your hand up.
Yeah, no, just if when the CAO respond to Nancy Gaudry, if they can forward to council.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Crowell, you're muted. No.
I unmuted myself. It's a reflex. It would be useful if the Heritage Playhouse could provide sort of financials so we can see where they're, where there's weaknesses and perhaps find ways.
That's why I've asked the CIO to do that with them, sort of thing, see exactly where their needs are. And so that, appreciate that. Yeah. Nothing further under correspondence. 8.1, we'll go to correspondence 8.2, and this is a letter or email request from the province regarding a meeting with John Premier Horgan and Honorable Selena Robinson at UBCM. And I don't know if we're going to actually have a UBCM or how UBCM will be handled, but we could possibly be having a conference call with them or a Zoom meeting with them. So that the request is there anything that council would like to bring to attention and have that conversation around with the minister and or other cabinet ministers or the premier? Is there anything that you want to raise specifically? Do you want to talk about BC ferries? Do you want to talk about forestry? Do you want to talk about water? Is there anything you specifically have in mind that you want to address? Councilor Dindrad?
I would like to have a better understanding how we could get more support for affordable housing. Because I know we are doing two initiatives. I mean, one is it's quite substantial, but still very, the needs are not going. I mean, I'm sure 70 units and the other few units are not going to address the needs. Gospel Rock is providing, but the thing about market rent, I feel that it still doesn't fulfill certain needs in the community. So I know during the BC housing, the supportive housing, we were even contemplating if we could have perhaps some funds to build other kinds of housing. And I would like to have a better understanding, because I know the program overall has $7 billion, I believe it's $7 billion. But I think I don't understand how we could access more money, that perhaps we could buy some land and
Well, I mean, buy some land and give it away. But there are other projects like the seniors want to do some affordable housing. The Lions are doing some affordable housing. They're working with BC Housing on that. And I believe that the Legion is considering doing some affordable housing. So there are projects that it doesn't all fall directly to the municipality to be able to provide land or funds, but those other, being aware, those other projects are going on. Councillor Kroll?
Thank you, Mayor Beamish. I was just going to say the provincial government just released another 1.7 billion, but it's up to the project proponents to apply for the funding. So as Mayor Beamish mentioned, like the Kiwanis project, which is part of the reason they asked for our support letter, was because it's part of what they need for applying for the funding for these projects. And also the Legion, they're looking at funding opportunities, and BC Housing is right there on the list.
Yeah. So there certainly are things that are being planned in the community right now relative to affordable housing. And but having that opportunity to ensure that we're aware of them, I think is important.
Yeah.
So that we can inform other people, such as informing and working with the seniors on their plan.
Yeah.
Is to make sure that they have access to those grant funds and are aware of what they are. Yeah. CEO, could you remind me, did we have a request to UBCM this year or a resolution?
You, Mr. Mayor. No resolutions have gone in. The council had passed a resolution related to affordable housing. I think Councilor Ladwick put something forward along those lines. Quite honestly, with the date changes and the cancellation of AVICC, we typically go through that route. That didn't happen. They're going to have a virtual conference soon. We haven't either prepared or sent any resolutions in. I'm also not aware of any resolutions from our neighboring communities.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen any. Yeah.
The last BCM, there was some decent coordination between not just the meetings, as you might recall, but also the briefing notes that were prepared to go in. So my sense is obviously we will be checking with them, but we're from staff perspective, we're not aware of any specific issue that we should be bringing forward from our perspective for what it's worth.
Councillor Ludwig?
Yeah, it was resolutions that I wanted to speak about. I don't have any interest, or I don't have any particular topics that I want to meet with the Premier about, but the resolution that Manny's referring to, I made last fall about drafting resolutions on one of our agendas so that we don't miss the call for resolutions.
Yeah.
And because sometimes just in our reading file, things get missed. Have they actually put out a call for resolutions already and I just missed it?
I don't believe they have this year. I mean, usually as CIO says, it goes through ABICC early and then they go from the ABICC conference, they go to UBCM. I think there's just that much uncertainty about what's happening this year. I haven't seen anything. Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, just to be clear, that's what my resolution was. It was that we table it just like we are today in the future so that we can prepare resolutions in a thoughtful manner.
Well, can I suggest the council think about that during this next week, and next week when we come back out of business arising, if there are any resolutions that you would like to put forward to UBCM, we make that a priority to put something forward quickly. And if there's any reason to meet with the ministers, we can do that as well. One area might simply be that preparation for policing. And we need to start having those conversations in earnest and with the ministry and with this new policing committee that our MLA is now chairing as well. So, yeah, Councillor Ludwig. Yeah.
The one that I mentioned last year that I want to continue to push is regulating plastics. I just think municipalities should start pushing the feds start to regulate the use of plastics, and I think we should continue to do that.
Well, let's start that list, CIO, and see what we can do, and we'll bring that up next week, and hopefully, if there's specifics that we can put forward, Councillor D'Andrade.
Just to make sure, are we having a discussion? We are submitting the resolutions, and are we going to have some platform during the meeting to discuss the resolutions? Or
next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, next week we'll make sure business arising that we talk to. Does anybody have any resolutions they want to bring forward? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay, motion to receive the correspondence from the Premier regarding the UBCM convention. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Ludwig, thank you. All in favor of receipt? Thank you. And go back to the corporate officer. Did we receive the council correspondence under 8.1?
No, you have not, Mr.
Okay.
Mayor.
The motion received the council correspondence under 8.1, that's dated June 29, 2020. Councillor D'Andrade, Councillor Kroll, all in favor? Thank you. One more item from Darnell Seegers, Mayor of District Sechelt, an invitation to attend an educational session on the provincial and local opiate situation. I haven't seen a date for that. I did ask about a date. There's no date in here. So unless somebody knows specifically, corporate officer?
I believe the communication requests dates that are good for anyone who would.
Okay, all right. So does anybody have a date that would work for them? And if we wanted to suggest a date and alternative dates, Councillor Kroll?
Mayor Seegers is in the audience, so maybe you'd like to discuss it.
Is she?
And then she might also want to add comments with respect to the UBCM motions.
All right, well, I appreciate her being here. Can Mayor Seegers come forward, please? Yes. Welcome to our council chambers. And you're still there. There you are. Thank you. Welcome.
I'm here. Yes. I can talk about UBCM.
Thank you.
The deadline for resolutions was June 30th. And the regional district submitted 6 and got 3 accepted.
Okay.
We're in the process at the District of Sechelt and the SCRD about to look at meetings. And as we did last year, we did some joint meetings.
Joint
So
meetings, correct.
we're going to be doing some of that as well. So that information, our corporate office or our executive administrator will be contacting Lindsay, I believe,
Okay, yes.
in Gibsons. Tracy at the regional district, and we'll be coordinating that. So that'll be coming in the next couple of days.
Okay.
With regards to the opioid session, information will be coming out on dates tomorrow. We had to make sure when we had the presenters actually available. So information will come out tomorrow with
Thank
some
you for that. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry we missed the UBCM dates. I didn't actually catch those or see those or hear any discussion of them. So
it was different this year.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So
Very
thank you. Is there anything else you wanted to contribute to our session tonight?
No, I'm enjoying it.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Well, thank you for being here.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay. Then we will wait. Yes, I'm certainly available to participate in the session on the local opioid situation, which is serious on the coast. And I hope that once we receive the dates, that other counselors will try to be available as well. Motion received the correspondence from Mayor Seegers, Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor Lumley, thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. We'll go to bylaws, and the only bylaw we have remaining on our agenda tonight is the Director of Finance bylaw for consideration of the 2020 tax sale. And first of all, a motion that be received. Councillor Kroll, Councillor Diandrad, thank you. And I'll go to the Director of Finance. Would you like to introduce this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as part of the state of emergency, on May 15th this year, the province enacted Ministerial Order number M159 under the Emergency Program Act. The order provides the authority to extend or defer certain requirements. And under this order, a council may by bylaw defer the annual tax sale for 2020 until September 27th, 2021. And if you have a look on page 2 of my report, I provided a history of tax sales over the past 5 years. And from 2015, so this time of year, we look at preliminary lists and see the number of properties that are on the list to start with before we start really following up. From 2015 to 2019, the average number of properties has been 19. This year, there's 18 properties on the list. So we're on par with previous years. And although collection efforts have been successful in the past, the challenging circumstances created by the pandemic may make it difficult for owners to make that minimum payment and avoid the tax sale this year, because it's quite unique circumstances this year. So as a result, in order to provide relief to property owners who may be facing financial hardship due to the pandemic, staff are recommending that the 2020 tax sale be deferred until September 27th, 2021. That date is legislated by the province. We will still make efforts to collect the taxes that are considered delinquent. So this year, that's 2018 taxes that have not been paid are classified as delinquent. And delinquent taxes will continue to incur interest charges until they're paid. And next year, on September 27th, any unpaid delinquent taxes, then that time it could be taxes from 2018 and 2019 at that point, will result in the property going as part of the 2021 tax sale.
Okay.
And so the deferral bylaw must be adopted by council by August 31st, as per the legislation in the order. And so the proposed bylaw is being presented today for 3 readings. And if council does want to give it 3 readings, I'll bring it back to the July 21st meeting for adoption. And so as mentioned, staff is recommending that the tax sale be deferred. However, council could choose not to defer the tax sale and not give the bylaw 3 readings. And in that case, we would continue on with the tax sale as per usual, as per the Local Government Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And thank you for bringing this opportunity forward. I'd like to motion from council that first of all, that the consideration of deferral be received. Councillor Kroll, thank you. Councillor Ladwig, thank you. All in favor of receipt of the consideration? Thank you. And the recommendation that the 2020 annual tax sale deferral bylaw 1283-2020 be given first, second, and third reading. Councillor Lumley, thank you. Councillor Diandrad, thank you. Further discussion of that. Anybody wish to discuss that? We certainly all understand what the reasons are behind that, so that, thank you very much, and all in favor? And thank you. I know the District C Shelter has passed a similar bylaw, so that we will, it's certainly important that we give everybody every consideration this year that we can. And thank you for doing that. So,
Thank you very much.
okay, thank you. New business, be no new business, no notice of motions. Our next meeting will be back here next Tuesday, July 21st at 7 p.m. And just a reminder to the people in the audience, there is room for 5 people to sit in council chambers. And I think you can tell from our screens that none of us are there. But the corporate officer is always takes these meetings in council chambers, and they just have to come and present yourself at the door. And there is room for 5 people to be in council chambers if that's where you would prefer to be. So thank you very much for attending. Thank you, council and staff, for your time tonight. And I'm going to ask council to stay behind for 1 minute after everything closes off. Thank you.